Hi there guys, welcome to this writing lesson. Today what we're going to be working on is helping you to understand the basic process of writing a film analysis paragraph. Now, we have done plenty of lessons on this before. The last couple of weeks we've been looking at clips and then doing this sort of writing for it. And I've also made a couple of other videos about how to improve our writing and how to follow this process. But hopefully what I'm going to do in this video to make it a little bit different is just try to knuckle down the basics of what we're really looking for, step by step. What would a basic paragraph look like responding to one of these questions? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through this process with you. I've also recently made a video about the assessment task itself and really what it's asking you to do, so take a look at that if you haven't already, if you need to. Okay, so as you can see here on my Word document, I'm just going to run through a couple of key ideas for us and work through the writing process. Our learning intention for today, of course, is that good writers use evidence to analyse how film texts show certain ideas. So the way that we're going to do this and the skills that we're going to develop through this lesson are that I can present ideas about a text. So the big ideas and my answer to a question that I might have been given, for example, in your assessment task. I can identify examples of scenes where ideas are expressed. So particular scenes that I might have shown you guys on Compass or in previous lessons, or you might even go and find on Netflix, watching the film if you like to. And lastly, I can analyse how the filmmakers were able to present these ideas. So actually getting into the detail of what is it that the film is actually doing to show this idea? How do I know that it's presenting this idea? So what I could do is, for example, look at the dialogue. So that's what's being said. So if Chris says something very interesting, or Jan or Rainey or Mum or Dad, for example, say something about this idea, I could use that. I could also use the camera angles. For example, if he's on top of a mountain and we see him from far away and it's spinning around, that's showing him at one with nature, for example. Or if it's a really close-up shot, an extreme close-up of a tear, sitting in his eye, he's starting to well up as he's looking at these beautiful reindeer running about in Alaska. So we could use all sorts of things, and that's us showing the detail of that's how we know that that's what they're feeling, or that's the idea that they're trying to express to us. So that's the nitty-gritty, and we'll get to that shortly. Okay, so what we're essentially doing in our paragraphs, and again, you can write one paragraph or you can write multiple paragraphs on one question, or you could challenge yourself to write multiple questions, okay, so multiple paragraphs. That's totally up to you. But essentially, either way you go, what a paragraph is doing is going to be answering a question, okay, and it's going to be presenting an idea about the film. So here are the three things that you will need to be doing in your writing process. Number one, you're going to be answering that big question, the what. So what is the big idea, or what is the big answer that you have for this question? So it might be, for example, about happiness. It might be about extremism. It might be about family. It might be about the wild versus and nature versus society, for example. So there's a list of questions that you guys hopefully have already had to choose from. Then what you're going to do is you'll have written, okay, here's what the big idea is that the film's teaching us. So what I'm going to ask you to do then is come up with, well, what's an example in the film? What's a scene or a moment or an event or a character, right, where we see this happen? And then the next step will be the how. So let's look at the details of that scene or that event or that character or that moment, whatever you want to do. Let's have a look at the details and what does that actually look like, and how do we know that that's what the filmmakers are trying to get across to us, okay? So those are the three big questions that in a paragraph, which could be 4 sentences, it could be 8 sentences, it's up to you how detailed you want it to go. I'm going to try and keep our paragraph today very, very simple and not overdo it. I'm going to try and limit myself to maybe 4 sentences, maybe 5 sentences. Don't want to overdo it, and I won't do too many examples, okay? So here we go, guys. You're going to watch me go through the process, and I want you to, keep a close eye on what my thinking is and what are the steps that I'm taking. I'm trying not to overcomplicate it. I'm trying to keep it very, very simple for you. Okay. So the question that I've chosen to do, because most of you won't do this one, this is a big extension question, and it's not something that we've looked at enormously in class. I'm just going to have a simple crack at this one. And the question is, what does Chris McCandless's journey teach us about taking ideas too seriously? Okay. So we know that Chris is a pretty extreme guy. He burns all of his money. He runs away. He leaves his life of not exactly luxury, but he's pretty well off and he's got a family that's pretty well off. He leaves that to go to the exact opposite. He wants to go live with nothing in Alaska. So what does the film say about taking an idea like that and going too far with it? Is there a consequence, for example, of going too far? All right. Or is it okay to be really extreme with your ideas? So that's what I'll be looking at in my question. So before I even start writing out, before I even go have a crack at a paragraph, I need to think to myself, well, what are some of the things that I already have, the tools or the resources that I already have at my fingertips so that I can approach this question? Do I even know what they're talking about there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Compass. So you'll see me open that up real quick. I'll go into my resources page in our English page. And my question's on extremism. You'll notice that I've organised lots of clips for you guys and examples here so that you can have a look yourselves. I'm going to click on extremism, and there's a couple of ones that I've put up there, but I'm just going to say, let's talk about leaves and berries. Okay, so I'll click on that one. I'll download that file. I've actually already downloaded it before. So I'm not going to take too long, but what I am going to do is quickly show you guys this clip. And we're going to just watch it together. I know that might be a little bit boring. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, we're going to watch it together, and I'm going to come up with the ideas as I'm watching it. So the question to me is, you know, is it okay or is it a bad thing to take ideas too seriously? What might end up happening? Okay.
Yeah, Alex could have a vehicle as well, but he decided to burn all of his money. And why did you do that?
I don't need money. It makes people cautious.
Come on, Alex, gotta be a little cautious. I mean, that book of yours is cool and everything, but you can't depend entirely on leaves and berries.
I don't know if you want to depend on much more than that.
Alright, there we go. So that's the end of that clip there that I've made for you guys. I'll pop back over to my Word document. There we go. So that's an example of one of the clips that you could find on Compass. Some of them we've looked at quite a bit in class before. For example, the ones on happiness and society and nature, that sort of thing. Families we looked at in class, but you're welcome to ask me for some more clips if you like. So that's the clip there, one of the clips there that I've found for extremism, that I've watched the movie and taken a clip of that. I've taken a look at a short clip, and what I really need to do is quickly answer the question to myself. What do I think? Did Chris take his ideas too extremely, and is that a good thing? So I might just put some dot points really quickly before I even start writing, just so that I can map what I was thinking about when I was watching that scene. So I'll go some dot points here really quickly. It'd be a good idea if you did this too when you were writing yours and looking at some scenes. So I might just write quickly that, you know, he burned all his money because he thought that made people cautious, which means that they're too careful and they sort of hang on and they don't take risks, right? Whereas he wants to get rid of all of his money and all of his safety blankets in a way so that he can go off and do something extreme. All right, so he burned all his money so that he wouldn't be as cautious. But Jan says, you can't just depend on leaves and berries. Right, now he responds to that by saying, well, I don't know if you want to depend on much more than leaves and berries. Surely, you know, we could just forage and find things in the woods, you know, and go out and live in the wild and be totally fine. But we know in the end that, well, he ultimately dies, and what's the reason he dies? So he was already starving for a long time, but he relies on his knowledge of leaves and berries, and he accidentally poisons himself. Poor fella. Okay? So his reliance on his extreme idea that you could just go out and live on close to nothing, that eventually kills him. Okay? So he took this idea far too seriously. There's nothing wrong with giving away his money and getting rid of his car and having a bit of an adventure, but trying to live on absolutely nothing, or close to nothing, that was probably taking things a little bit too far, and he kind of paid the price for it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is walk you through the 3-step process of what it really looks like to write a quick paragraph or a quick answer to one of these questions. So, the writing process, I'm going to try and keep it basic, trying not to overcomplicate it. So here we go. So step one, our big question is what? So what is my big answer or my big idea to the question? Okay, so this question is, what is the idea being expressed by the film, or my answer to the question? So the way that we're going to answer this is to write ourselves a topic sentence. That'll be the first sentence of our paragraph. And almost in any form of writing that you do, usually if it's informative or analytical, your first sentence will be the main idea. You're trying to tell your reader the topic. So that's exactly what we're going to do with ours. So our first sentence of the paragraph is called our topic sentence, and it basically tells the reader the topic or the focus of our paragraph. So basically it presents a clear idea or answer. So here, as you can see, I've actually dot pointed a couple of sentence starters or ways that we might be able to start a paragraph and present our new idea or our topic. So a couple of examples include, the film Into the Wild shows us that ... And I could present all sorts of ideas. I could say the film Into the Wild shows us that not all families are happy families. I could write Into the Wild explores the idea that, for example, society can be a very ugly place. People can be very harsh to each other. Or I could write, the film teaches us that happiness can only be obtained by being with other people. By completely isolating yourself, you can't be truly happy. Maybe. They're just a couple of examples, but I want to stick to my topic. And I was talking a second ago about the fact that ultimately he took his idea too seriously, and that ended up having a negative impact on him. So my sentence starter, I'm going to just copy one of these. Let's go. I might say the film. I'll mix a few up. I'll say, the film Into the Wild teaches us that ... Now what do I want to say? I'm going to say, teaches us that taking ideas too extremely, or I could say too far. So taking ideas too far can lead to negative consequences. I could write it like that. Alright. Or I could say can be dangerous. I could keep it very simple. The film Into the Wild teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous. Alright. So there we go. That's our very first sentence of the paragraph. I'm pretty happy with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in italics so that you can see that that's what I've been writing. Okay. I might even pop it in red. The film Into the Wild teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous. I'll delete that comma. I don't think it needs to be there. Fantastic. Alright, so our next step. So we've got our topic sentence. That's step one. Our what? Our big idea. That's there. So what does this film teach us about extremism? Well, the film teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous. I'm happy with that. I think you should be too. Alright, our second step. So step two is in our paragraph looking at when. When do we see this in the film? When is a good example of this? When is a scene that we can point to? So I've just had a look at one of these scenes here. Alright, and we watched it together. So I could just refer to that scene and I can introduce that scene. Now, there's plenty of scenes that I could be looking at, but let's do them one at a time. For this example, I just want to keep it nice and simple for us. So I will write. So what we need to be doing is, so we've got some sentence starters here where we could introduce our example. Now in this, we're not going to write every single thing that's happening in the scene or anything like that. We're going to get into some of the details when we get to our next step. But right now, we simply just want to introduce when's a good example of this happening. So some of the ways that we could write this could be, this can be seen in the scene when ... A good example of this is when ... This is shown by, right? And lastly, for example, when ... So there's plenty of other ways that we could write this. But here's just a couple of really good ones to get us started. So the scene that I looked at was what? That was the leaves and berries, and from memory they were around a campfire, they were having a chat. Okay? So I might say, you know what? I'll copy this down here. Alright, and then I'll continue writing. So the film Into the Wild teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous. And then I want to say, this can be seen in the conversation between Jan and Chris around the bonfire. Because all I'm doing here, I'm not going into an enormous detail yet. I just want to say, when do we see this? When's a great example of this? And we just watched a clip, and I'm saying, this can be seen in this moment. There we go. So, this can be seen in the conversation between Jan and Chris around the bonfire. I'm trying not to do massive sentences, trying to keep them nice and short, just to keep them basic so that you understand what we're really trying to do. But again, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if we read it all together, let's just see if we're happy. The film Into the Wild teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous. This can be seen in the conversation between Jan and Chris around the bonfire. Alright, fantastic. I'm happy with that. Now, our big step, our really important one is step 3, and that's the how. This is when we're basically asking, we've got this idea about the film because we've watched it and we've come up with this idea, and we've looked at a particular scene, but how can I explain to you the steps that the filmmaker's gone to, or how have they created that meaning and sent that to me? Okay? So, a couple of things that we can ask ourselves here are, how did the filmmakers actually show us this? Was it shown to us by something that was being said? So the dialogue, for example, in our example, we were looking at something that Jan said in particular. Okay? Was it a facial expression of an actor? So it might have been, you know, a sad face or a tear running down their eye as they were dying. Spoiler alert. It could be the way the camera shows something up really, really close, or it shows it really, really far away, as I was talking about before. It could even be the music or the sound effects going on in the background. We know that Eddie Vedder created the soundtrack for this film. There's some fantastic songs. Some of them are called Society, Greed, yeah, and Family, things like that. So they've got very specific meanings. Now, in our example, we don't want to overcomplicate it. We're really just going to focus on what is being said. There's not too much interesting going on in that scene in terms of the camera or anything like that. There's a little bit of cool acting going on, some of the faces that they make. But really, we just want to look at what's being said for our example. So, here are some interesting ways you could write about how the filmmakers have presented this idea in that scene. So, if we were talking about camera angles, we could say, there is an extreme close-up of Chris showing ... right? Or the camera looks from Chris's perspective at, right? So that's if we were going to talk about camera. There's a few different things we could say there. Music, the song, whatever, plays over the top. Acting or expression, there's a tear in Chris's eyes showing us that blah, blah, blah. Dialogue, Wayne tells Chris that, right? And he says, you know, it's a mistake to get too into this stuff, yeah? To take these ideas too seriously, which is pretty relevant if you want to look at that bar scene. So that's this one here. He says that there, but anyway, not relevant right now. Or it could be some of the props or the some of the things in the scene itself. So a book that he might be holding, you know, Call of the Wild or things like that. Okay, so what I want to do now is write about that dialogue, that event, that scene itself, and how that's expressing that idea. So I've said here that this can be seen in the conversation between Jan and Chris around the bonfire. So I might quickly detail some of the things that are being said here that are relevant to the question. So I might say, Jan is talking to Chris about him burning his money. Okay. Now, Chris says that he did it because, and I can use the quote, money makes people cautious. Alright? And he says that money makes people cautious, so he's wanting to take a little bit of a risk. So I might do a quick sentence explaining what he's really meaning there. So Chris says that he did it because money makes people cautious. He wants to be free and take risks, and money would make him too careful. I might even say here that what he means is that he wants to be free and take risks, and money would make him too careful. Next, I want to have a look at what Jan says about the leaves and the berries. So Jan responds arguing that people can't, whoops, I could even put the quote in here, that you can't just depend on leaves and berries. Alright, now what I'm going to do is do a quick flash forward in my mind, because we know that he ultimately dies from eating these leaves and berries, or eating the wrong one. He eats that potato plant weed thing, and it accidentally poisons him. So I might say, Jan is right about this, as Chris ends up dying from poison by eating just leaves and berries. So what I'm going to do finally is I've had a look at the dialogue and what's been said and how that relates to the question. What I'm going to do is just put a sentence at the end just to wrap it all up, and how is this really answering this idea. So I've said the film, let's read it all together. The film Into the Wild teaches us that taking ideas too far can be dangerous, right? So we know that that leads to his death. This can be seen in the conversation between Jan and Chris around the bonfire. Jan is talking to Chris about him burning his money. Chris says that he did it because money makes people cautious. What he means is that he wants to be free and take risks, and that money would make him too careful. Jan responds, arguing that you can't just depend on leaves and berries. And now I'm adding in my analysis of this, so my understanding of it is that Jan is right about this, as Chris ends up dying from poison by eating just leaves and berries. Okay? And I'm going to wrap it all up and say that this shows that Chris taking his ideas too seriously, we'd say, was ultimately dangerous for him. Yep. Alright, fantastic. Now, there's lots of other things or examples that we could point at. Simply the fact that he wanted to be out in the wild, out in the middle of nowhere, and just rely on himself like this, and he ends up starving. He ends up being locked in a frozen bus during the winter and can't get out, even when the spring melts the river. Okay, so as a result of him taking this idea too seriously and going too hardcore or too extreme with it, he ends up failing, or he ends up dying. Altogether, that's a pretty decent paragraph. It's not enormous. Let's count up how many words we have in this. So we have 114 words in this paragraph. Not massive. Okay, so what I'm asking you guys to do in your assessment task is to write one paragraph, just like this one if you can. Have your best go at it. You can write a couple of paragraphs. It could be on the same question with similar ideas, or you could write a different question, or you could answer a different question in a couple of different paragraphs. It's up to you how much you want to do. At the end of the day, you're being marked on your quality of writing and what it is and how it is that you're writing, those skills that you can demonstrate, not on the quantity or how much you write. Okay? So, again, there's some fantastic resources that I've already put out for you guys about this writing process. Hopefully this has helped a little bit to just walk step by step through some of these skills. Please email me, or please you can set up a WebEx lesson with me where we can just one-on-one work on what you've been writing, or you can send in some work through an email that you've been working on. Okay, and I can give you some feedback and tips. I've already been doing that with a few students so far. Lastly, there's a couple of things you can find on Compass already. So there's a PowerPoint writing lesson analysing film. Go back and have a look at that. I think that was from about week 4. And there's also a video here that you can click the link on. Me walking through this process on a different example. I think we were looking at society in Los Angeles and all that sort of stuff as well. So, hopefully I haven't overcomplicated that for you. Hopefully I'm just slowly walking you through the steps and how you would arrive at that final that final paragraph. Okay. All the best. Good luck. Please let me know if you need any assistance or any help. Okay. I strongly encourage you to take a look back through the previous lessons and particularly these resources here. All right. Good luck.